We live in the age of convenience. We live in an age of unbelievable convenience. With the flick of a switch, we have light and power. With a tap on a screen, endless supplies arrive at our door. Our anxieties are soothed by constant connection. But what happens when the circuit breaks for good? What happens when you wake up to a silence that's vast, deep, and completely unforgiving? Imagine it. Your provisions have dwindled to nothing. There's no clean water, no reliable fire, and absolutely no hope of rescue. Life's ledger has turned permanently red. Faced with this absolute depletion, can the raw survival instinct overcome the sheer terror of the unknown? How long can 4 humans persist on the fading fuel of sheer will? This is the story of 4 people pushed to the absolute limit. For them, the taiga, that endless frozen forest, was no longer a challenge. It demanded surrender. Each breath they took burned in their lungs. Each step cost them energy they couldn't afford to lose. Overnight, the temperature plummeted to a brutal -30 degrees Celsius. The cold wasn't just a feeling, it was a physical weight pressing down on them. Alex, the doctor of the group, moved slowly, leaning heavily on Caleb. Behind them, Diana and Brenda strained to pull a makeshift wooden toboggan. Its contents were heartbreakingly minimal: a couple of torn sleeping bags, 2 battered pots, and a few essential tools. The rope they used to pull it burned their hands even through the freezing air. Every single motion was agony. Diana rasped, her voice like sandpaper. "Water. My throat feels like it's on fire." She had to stop every few dozen yards just to catch her breath. Hunger was no longer a dull ache in their stomachs. It was a screaming, relentless void. Caleb's face was a mask of stubborn determination, but Brenda's fingers had gone completely numb. Suddenly, Alex gasped, a sharp pain lancing through his surgically repaired abdomen. "We have to stop," he said, his voice strained. "I can't keep going. I'll just drag us all down. Every step we take now is just reducing our lifespan." They had burned the last of their rations the night before. The calories were gone. All that remained was pure, crystalline willpower, and even that was starting to fray under the crushing, pervasive cold. Somehow, the 4 of them managed to scrape together a small fire. They used dry inner pine bark and little bits of kindling they found hidden in the crooks of trees. The flame was weak, a pathetic flicker that illuminated their misery, but did little to repel the biting cold. Caleb, a former hedge fund manager who was obsessed with movement and strategy, slammed his fist against the frozen earth in frustration. "We can't just stay here. Every day we stand still is another step toward death. We have to move, risk a sprained ankle to find a river, a cabin, anything." But Alex, the doctor, shook his head. "Moving now is recklessly dangerous. We have no reserves. One fall, one simple injury, could cost all 4 of us our lives. We have to stabilize first, get to a zero-sum state, before we can risk any energy on exploration." Diana, ever the mediator, stepped in. "Both of you are right," she said calmly. "An immediate escape is unrealistic, but staying put forever is also a death sentence. Today we focus on one thing: strengthening our shelter. Tomorrow the strongest of us will scout, but only within a 1-mile radius. Minimal risk for maximum necessary gain." Caleb's anger seemed to dissipate. He understood. Survival was no longer about bold escapes or grand plans. It was about careful, precise, and calculated actions. As the small fire dwindled, the silence of the taiga deepened. Hunger screamed through every one of their thoughts. Caleb found his mind drifting back to his old life. He remembered wasteful feasts, a Thanksgiving turkey half-eaten, gourmet pies thrown away. Back then, his life was about maximizing profit. Now, it was about minimizing the loss of body energy. Alex pondered the Hippocratic oath he had taken. First, do no harm. But out here, every choice inflicted some kind of harm. Taking a life, even that of a tiny rodent or a bird, was no longer a moral question. It was a survival imperative. All his medical knowledge, his sterile tools and medicines were useless. All that mattered now was bark, fire, and the cold, hard laws of nature. Diana focused on the physics and biology of their situation. The taiga didn't judge them. It simply enforced consequences. But it was Brenda, the quiet librarian, who saw what the others missed. She observed the details, the different textures of bark, the subtle changes in the forest, the tiny signs of life that were invisible to everyone else. Her meticulous attention to detail was about to become crucial. While the men wrestled with strategy and fatigue, Brenda was methodically searching for dry fuel under what she called the inverted shelter, the dry underside of low-hanging pine boughs. Her trained eyes spotted something unusual, a small hollow in a piece of old heartwood, perfectly protected from the snow and wind. And inside, a nest with 2 pale blue eggs. They were fragile, perfect, and undeniable proof that life could persist, even in this brutal cold. This was protein that required 0 energy expenditure to harvest. Carefully, Brenda pocketed them, a bitter awareness settling in. To keep her friends alive, she had to take this life. She returned to the pathetic fire and presented the eggs. A stunned silence fell over the group. Diana inspected them. They were small, clean, and safe to eat. Alex, the doctor, made the call. They would eat them raw for immediate energy. The first egg was for him, to deal with his injury. The second was divided equally among the other 3. Each swallow was a small miracle, providing precious hours of functional energy. Diana reflected quietly. An entire bird's life traded for just a few hours of human survival. The tiny fire now seemed to burn a little brighter. It was a symbol of hope. A renewed focus settled over them. The hunger was still there, but for a moment, it was caged. The sun rose the next day, pale and indifferent. Caleb, energized by the tiny amount of protein, was now focused on sustainable survival. He was going to build passive traps. He meticulously constructed 5 Paiute Deadfall traps. The design is brilliant in its simplicity, just 3 sticks and a heavy rock, all precisely balanced. No rope, no knots. He measured each stick, carved each notch with deliberate care. He placed the traps along what looked like small mammal runs. It took him 2 painstaking hours, carefully rationing every movement to conserve energy. This was survival as engineering. Before he left to set the traps, Diana tied their only compass to his wrist. "Do not go more than 1 mile," she said firmly. "And you have to return after 3 hours, even if you find no signs of life. Promise me." "I promise," Caleb said. He carried a single stick for bait, wrapped in frozen bark that he had soaked with urine, a desperate lure for rodents. He moved through the forest deliberately, his eyes scanning the ground, reading the story written in the snow. Broken twigs, disturbances in the moss, faint tracks. He found them, shallow prints, maybe a weasel or a vole, leading to a sheltered path along a line of fallen logs. It was the perfect spot. By dusk, he returned, utterly exhausted. There was no immediate catch, but now 5 passive deadfalls were set, silently waiting. Their approach to survival had shifted. It was no longer just reactive, desperate scrambling. It was now systemic, a game of anticipation and preparation. The Taiga demands courage, ingenuity, and an honest reassessment of what life really is. True survival isn't about heroic rescues or finding abandoned cabins full of food. It's about eggs, sticks, dry branches, and the careful, calculated expenditure of energy. Stripped of every luxury, these 4 ordinary humans were performing extraordinary acts. They were creating light in the darkness, not with easy switches, but with friction, tension, and an indomitable will to live. What day 37 would bring was still unknown. Would there be prey in their traps, or would a blizzard descend and bury them? Only one truth persisted. The will to live is a self-replenishing fuel as long as the fight is worth it. The genius of survival lies not in grand gestures, but in meticulous attention to detail. Caleb's mastery of gravity, tension, and the Paiute Deadfall mirrored his old life in finance. But out here, failure meant death. They had entered the passive income stage of survival. Set the trap, conserve energy, and wait. Each small act, finding the eggs, building the fire, setting the traps, was a monumental victory against the endless, crushing cold. The fight continues. Thanks for watching. If you found this story of resilience inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video.